The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Buckingham Palace as Captain James Mitchell adjusted his ceremonial uniform for what would be his final inspection as head of the Royal Protection Unit. After 15 years of dedicated service, he had earned the respect of every member of the royal family through his unwavering professionalism and quiet dignity. Today, however, would test those bonds in ways he never imagined. James had joined the palace security team as a young sergeant, fresh from his military service in Afghanistan. His calm demeanor and sharp instincts quickly caught the attention of his superiors, leading to rapid promotions within the elite protection detail. Over the years, he had witnessed countless private moments, family tensions, and public controversies, always maintaining the strict code of silence that defined his profession. The relationship between the royal family members had always been complex, but recent months had brought particular strain to the household. The media constantly speculated about tensions between different branches of the family, and James had observed firsthand how these pressures affected everyone within the palace walls. His role required him to remain neutral and professional, regardless of the personal dynamics he witnessed daily. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had always treated James with genuine warmth and respect. Unlike some members of the royal household who barely acknowledged the staff, she made an effort to remember personal details about the security team. She knew about his daughter's university studies, his wife's work as a nurse, and always inquired about his family's well-being during their brief interactions. This personal connection had developed naturally over the years of protection duty. James had been present during some of Catherine's most challenging moments, including the intense media scrutiny during her early years as a royal, the demanding schedule of royal engagements, and the pressure of raising young children in the public eye. He had seen her genuine kindness toward staff members, her dedication to charitable causes, and her efforts to modernize royal protocols while respecting tradition. Queen Camilla, on the other hand, maintained a more formal relationship with the security detail. While professional and courteous, she kept clear boundaries between herself and the staff. James understood this approach and respected it, though he noticed how different it felt compared to Catherine's more personal style of interaction. The tension in the palace had been building for weeks, stemming from disagreements about upcoming royal engagements and protocol decisions. James had overheard heated discussions during security briefings about conflicting schedules and competing priorities between different royal households. The stress was affecting everyone, from senior advisors to junior staff members. On this particular morning, James was conducting his routine security check when he noticed unusual activity in the private quarters. Senior advisors were moving between offices with concerned expressions, and the normally bustling palace corridors seemed charged with an underlying tension. His years of experience told him that something significant was developing. The day's schedule included a charity event where both Catherine and Camilla would appear together, representing different aspects of the royal family's charitable work. These joint appearances required careful coordination between their respective teams, and James had noticed increasing friction between the two households. Staff members in recent planning meetings. As James reviewed the security arrangements for the charity event, he reflected on how much the royal family had changed since he first joined the protection detail. The public's expectations had evolved. Social media had created new challenges for privacy and security, and the internal dynamics of the family had shifted with marriages, births, and changing roles within the monarchy. His position gave him a unique perspective on the human side of royalty. Behind the public ceremonies and official portraits were real people dealing with family relationships, personal struggles, and the constant pressure of public scrutiny. James had learned to read the subtle signs of stress, the carefully maintained composure during difficult moments, and the genuine emotions that occasionally broke through the royal facade. The morning briefing revealed concerns about potential media attention at the charity event, with intelligence suggesting that photographers were particularly interested in capturing any signs of tension between family members. James's team would need to be especially vigilant about maintaining appropriate distance while ensuring the royal safety and privacy. As he prepared for what he didn't yet know would be a day that would change everything. James checked his equipment one final time. His radio crackled with routine updates from other security personnel, the familiar rhythm of protection duty that had defined his career. The palace around him hummed with its usual activity, staff members hurrying between meetings, preparations underway for the day's events. Little did James know that within hours, his unwavering sense of duty and personal loyalty would put him at the center of a confrontation that would reverberate through the royal household. The principles that had guided his entire career were about to be tested in a way that would force him to choose between his professional obligations and his personal convictions. The charity event would unfold in ways no one anticipated, and James's response to what he witnessed would ignite a fury that would expose the deep fault lines running through the modern royal family. His 15 years of silent service were about to end with a moment that would be remembered long after his retirement. The Royal Children's Hospital Charity Gala was one of the most important events on the royal calendar, bringing together prominent donors, medical professionals, and members of the royal family to support pediatric healthcare initiatives. The grand ballroom of the Dorchester Hotel had been transformed into an elegant venue, with crystal chandeliers casting warm light over tables, adorned with white roses and royal blue accents. James arrived at the hotel 3 hours before the event to oversee final security preparations. His team had already swept the venue twice, coordinated with hotel security, and established secure routes for the royal arrivals. The protection detail for joint royal events required extensive planning, as different members of the family traveled separately and had distinct security protocols. Catherine was scheduled to arrive first. As the patron of the Children's Hospital Foundation, she would deliver the keynote address about the importance of mental health support for young patients and their families. Camilla would arrive shortly after to present awards to outstanding medical staff and volunteers. The careful timing was designed to allow both royals to shine in their respective roles, while minimizing potential awkwardness. As guests began arriving, James positioned himself in the hotel's main corridor, where he could monitor both the ballroom entrance and the private lift that would bring the royal family members to the event. His earpiece crackled with updates from his team stationed throughout the venue, confirming that security protocols were proceeding smoothly. Catherine's arrival went perfectly according to plan. Her car pulled up to the hotel's private entrance at exactly 6:30, and she stepped out wearing an elegant navy blue dress that perfectly balanced royal sophistication with approachable warmth. James watched from his position as she greeted the hotel manager and charity organizers with genuine smiles and personal comments that immediately put everyone at ease. During the cocktail reception, James observed Catherine moving gracefully through the crowd, speaking with donors, medical staff, and families who had benefited from the hospital's services. Her ability to make each person feel heard and valued was remarkable, and James noticed how the atmosphere in the room seemed to lift whenever she approached a new group of guests. The trouble began when Camilla arrived 20 minutes later than scheduled. Her delayed arrival had already created tension among the event organizers, who were struggling to keep the evening's program on track. James immediately sensed that something was amiss when he saw Camilla's expression as she emerged from her car. Her usual composed demeanor seemed strained, and her responses to the greeting committee were notably brief. From his position near the ballroom entrance, James could see both royal women as the evening progressed. Catherine was deeply engaged in conversation with a group of young doctors, listening intently as they described innovative treatment programs. Her genuine interest in their work was evident in her thoughtful questions and encouraging responses. Meanwhile, Camilla seemed distracted and less engaged than usual. James noticed her checking her phone several times during conversations, something highly unusual for such a formal royal event. Her interactions with guests appeared cordial but lacked the warmth that typically characterized her public appearances. The evening's program began with Catherine's keynote address, which received enthusiastic applause from the audience. She spoke passionately about the hospital's mission, sharing moving stories about young patients and highlighting the dedication of the medical staff. James observed from the side of the stage, noting how her words seemed to resonate deeply with everyone in the room. When Camilla took the stage for the award presentation, the atmosphere shifted subtly. Her remarks were perfectly appropriate but delivered with less emotional connection than Catherine's speech. James noticed murmurs among some guests, though he couldn't determine if they were simply comparing the two presentations or responding to something more specific. During the dinner portion of the evening, James maintained his position near the royal table, where both women sat with hospital administrators and major donors. The conversation appeared pleasant on the surface, but James's trained eye detected subtle signs of tension. Camilla's responses were becoming shorter, and she seemed increasingly focused on her phone rather than the ongoing discussions. The critical moment came during the charity auction, when a particularly generous donation was announced in Catherine's honor. The donor, a prominent businessman whose own child had been treated at the hospital, specifically praised Catherine's personal visits to young patients and her advocacy for improved mental health services. The audience erupted in spontaneous applause, with many guests rising to their feet. James watched Camilla's reaction to this unexpected tribute. Her smile appeared forced, and she remained seated while others stood to applaud. The contrast was subtle but noticeable to anyone paying close attention. James felt a growing unease as he recognized the signs of mounting frustration that he had observed in various royal household situations over the years. As the evening continued, the divide between the two royal women became more apparent. Catherine continued to engage warmly with guests, while Camilla seemed increasingly withdrawn. James overheard snippets of conversation that suggested some guests were beginning to notice the difference in their approaches to the event. The charity auction raised a record amount for the Children's Hospital, and the evening was widely considered a success by the organizers and attendees. However, James could see that beneath the surface, tensions were building that would soon explode in ways none of them anticipated. The car journey back to the palace would prove to be the moment when professional courtesy gave way to personal confrontation. The journey back to Buckingham Palace should have been a routine 20-minute drive through London's evening traffic. Both Catherine and Camilla had traveled to the charity gala in separate vehicles, maintaining their distinct schedules and security protocols. James was assigned to Catherine's protection detail for the return journey, riding in the front passenger seat of the armored Bentley while Catherine sat in the rear with her private secretary. The atmosphere inside Catherine's car was relaxed and positive. She was still energized from the successful evening, discussing with her private secretary the significant donations raised and the meaningful connections made with hospital staff and patient families. James listened to her genuine enthusiasm as she talked about plans for future visits to the children's wards and potential new initiatives to support young patients' mental health. Through his earpiece, James could hear routine updates from the other security vehicles in their convoy. Camilla's car was traveling approximately 2 minutes behind them, following the same route back to the palace. The radio chatter was standard operational communication, with no indication of any problems or concerns. However, as they approached the palace gates, James's radio suddenly crackled with urgent communication from Camilla's protection detail. There had been an unexpected change of plans. Instead of proceeding directly to her private apartments, Camilla was requesting an immediate meeting with Catherine. Her private secretary was insisting that the matter was urgent and could not wait until the following day. James felt his professional instincts heighten as he heard the tension in his colleague's voice. After 15 years of royal protection duty, he could distinguish between routine scheduling changes and situations that carried underlying conflict. This request had an edge to it that suggested something more serious than a simple conversation between family members. Catherine's private secretary received the message and quietly informed her of Camilla's request. James watched in his rearview mirror as Catherine's expression shifted from post-event satisfaction to concern and then to resigned acceptance. She instructed her secretary to confirm that she would meet with Camilla in the blue drawing room within 30 minutes of their arrival. The blue drawing room was often used for informal family meetings, away from the more formal staterooms where official business was conducted. James had provided security for countless conversations in that room over the years, ranging from pleasant family gatherings to difficult discussions about royal duties and public responsibilities. As they arrived at the palace, James coordinated with his team to ensure appropriate security coverage for the unexpected meeting. His role would be to position himself discreetly outside the drawing room, maintaining the royals' privacy while ensuring their safety. This was a standard arrangement for family conversations, though the late hour and urgent nature of the request made him more alert than usual. Catherine entered the blue drawing room first, taking a seat in one of the comfortable armchairs near the fireplace. James positioned himself in the adjacent corridor, close enough to respond quickly if needed, but far enough to respect the privacy of the conversation. The palace corridors were quiet at this hour, with most staff having finished their duties for the day. When Camilla arrived, James immediately noticed her demeanor was quite different from her public persona at the charity gala. Her usual composed expression had been replaced by something much more intense, and her movements had an urgency that suggested she had been building toward this confrontation throughout the evening. Camilla's private secretary attempted to follow her into the drawing room, but she firmly instructed him to wait outside. This departure from normal protocol caught James's attention, as senior royals typically included their private secretaries in important conversations to ensure accurate records and appropriate follow-up. Actions. The door to the blue drawing room closed, with a sharp click that seemed to echo through the quiet corridor. James positioned himself where he could monitor the entrance while maintaining appropriate distance. His years of experience had taught him to read the subtle signs that distinguished routine family conversations from more serious confrontations. Within minutes, James could hear raised voices coming from behind the closed door. While he couldn't make out specific words, the tone and rhythm of the conversation clearly indicated a heated disagreement. This was highly unusual, as royal family members were trained from childhood to maintain composure even during difficult discussions. The volume of the conversation continued to escalate, and James found himself in an increasingly uncomfortable position. His duty was to protect both royal family members, but the nature of their conflict was clearly personal rather than a security threat. However, his growing concern for Catherine's well-being began to outweigh his professional obligation to maintain distance from family disputes. Through the heavy oak door, James could now clearly hear Camilla's voice raised in anger, though the specific words remained unclear. Catherine's responses were quieter and more measured, which only seemed to intensify Camilla's frustration. The dynamic reminded James of conversations he had witnessed between parents and adult children during particularly stressful family situations. As the confrontation continued, James realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in his years of royal service. The careful protocols and dignified restraint that typically governed royal family interactions were breaking down completely. His professional training told him to maintain his position and allow the family members to resolve their differences privately. However, his personal respect and concern for Catherine, combined with the increasingly aggressive tone coming from the drawing room, began to create an internal conflict that would soon force him to make a decision that would change everything. The confrontation behind the closed door of the blue drawing room had been escalating for nearly 20 minutes when James heard something that made his blood run cold. Camilla's voice, now clearly audible through the heavy oak door, was delivering a verbal assault that went far beyond any disagreement about royal duties or protocol disputes. "You think you're so perfect, don't you?" Camilla's voice rang out with unmistakable venom. "With your charity visits and your perfect speeches, making the rest of us look incompetent. You're nothing but an attention-seeking commoner who never deserved to be part of this family." James felt his jaw tighten as he heard these words. In 15 years of royal protection duty, he had never witnessed such a personal attack between family members. His professional training emphasized neutrality and non-interference in family matters, but the cruelty in Camilla's voice was testing every principle he held dear. Catherine's response was barely audible, spoken with the quiet dignity that James had come to admire over the years. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Camilla. I've only ever tried to serve the crown and support the causes that matter to the people." This measured response seemed to enrage Camilla further. "Serve the crown? You serve yourself. Every charity event, every hospital visit, every speech is calculated to make you look good and make Charles and me look like we don't care. You're manipulative and selfish, and tonight proved it." James found himself gripping the radio on his belt, his knuckles white with tension. He had seen Catherine's genuine tears when meeting sick children at the hospital, witnessed her private donations to families in need, and observed her countless acts of kindness toward palace staff. The accusations being hurled at her were not just false. They were deliberately cruel. "The way those people looked at you tonight," Camilla continued, her voice rising to nearly a shout, "as if you were some kind of saint while treating me like I was invisible. You orchestrated that whole tribute, didn't you? Made sure that businessmen would single you out for praise while I sat there like a fool." "I had nothing to do with Mr. Henderson's speech," Catherine replied, her voice still calm but with a slight tremor that James recognized as suppressed emotion. He was simply expressing gratitude for the hospital visits. "I never asked for recognition." "Liar." Camilla's voice cracked like a whip. "Everything you do is calculated. Your clothes, your speeches, your interactions with staff and patients. It's all an act designed to make the rest of us look bad. You're destroying this family's reputation with your shameless self-promotion." James heard the sound of a chair scraping against the floor, followed by footsteps. Through the gap under the door, he could see shadows moving as someone paced back and forth. The conversation had clearly moved beyond any reasonable disagreement into territory that was deeply personal and increasingly vicious. "I've watched you for years," Camilla continued, her voice now lower but somehow more menacing. "Pretending to be the perfect royal while secretly undermining everyone around you. You think because you married William you can do whatever you want. Well, I'm queen now, and I'm tired of your games." Catherine's voice, when it came, was steadier than James expected. "I have never tried to undermine anyone. I've always tried to support you and Charles, just as I support William and our children. We're family, Camilla. We should be working together, family." Camilla's laugh was harsh and bitter. "You'll never be real family. You're an outsider who got lucky, and deep down everyone knows it. The staff knows it, the media knows it, and the public will figure it out eventually." James felt something break inside him as he listened to these words. He had seen how Catherine treated every person she encountered with respect and genuine care. He had witnessed her private moments of doubt and struggle, her efforts to balance royal duty with motherhood, and her unwavering commitment to the causes she supported. The attack continued relentlessly. "You think your little charity work makes you special? I've been doing royal duties longer than you've been alive. But somehow, everything becomes about St. Catherine and her perfect life. Well, your perfect image is built on manipulation and lies." "That's not true," Catherine said, her voice finally showing signs of strain. "I genuinely care about these causes. The children at the hospital, the families we help, the charities we support. None of it is about me." "Of course you'd say that," Camilla shot back. "You've become so good at lying you probably believe it yourself. But I see through you. I see how you calculate every move to make yourself look better and everyone else look worse." James realized his hands were shaking with suppressed anger. The woman he was hearing described bore no resemblance to the Catherine he had come to know and respect. Camilla was constructing a fictional version of events that served only to justify her own jealousy and resentment. As the verbal assault continued, James faced the most difficult decision of his professional career. His duty was to remain neutral and protect both royal family members. But listening to this unfair and vicious attack on someone he respected and admired was becoming impossible to bear. The moment that would define the rest of his life was rapidly approaching. The moment that would change everything came when James heard Catherine's voice break. After enduring nearly 30 minutes of relentless verbal abuse, the composed dignity that had carried her through years of royal duty finally cracked under the weight of Camilla's assault. "Please," Camilla, Catherine said, her voice now thick with unshed tears. I don't understand why you're saying these things. I've never done anything to hurt you or Charles. I just want to do my duty and help people. Why can't we work together? The pain in her voice cut through James like a knife. In all his years of protecting Catherine, he had seen her face hostile crowds, aggressive photographers, and intense public scrutiny with unwavering grace. But this personal attack from within her own family was breaking her down in a way that no external pressure ever had. Camilla's response was swift and merciless. Work together? With someone who constantly undermines everything I do? You're pathetic, Catherine. Crying because someone finally told you the truth about what you really are. A calculating, manipulative social climber who destroys everything she touches. That was the moment James's professional restraint shattered completely. Without conscious thought, he found himself pushing open the door to the blue drawing room. His 15 years of protocol training overwhelmed by a surge of protective fury that he had never experienced before. That's enough, James said, his voice cutting through the room with military precision. Both women turned toward him in shock. Catherine's eyes were red with tears she had been fighting to control, while Camilla's face was flushed with anger and surprise at the interruption. Captain Mitchell, Camilla said, her voice immediately shifting to royal authority, you will leave this room immediately. This is a private family conversation. James stood his ground, something no member of the Royal Protection Unit had ever done in such circumstances. With respect, Your Majesty, I cannot stand by and listen to such unfair accusations against the Princess of Wales. The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine stared at James with a mixture of shock and gratitude, while Camilla's expression transformed from surprise to absolute rage. The breach of protocol was unprecedented, and everyone in the room understood the magnitude of what had just happened. How dare you, Camilla said, her voice low and dangerous. How dare you interfere in royal family business? You will be dismissed immediately for this insubordination. James felt a strange calm settle over him as he realized his career was ending, but his sense of justice was finally satisfied. I've served this family for 15 years, Your Majesty. I've protected you, your husband, and every member of this household with complete loyalty. But I will not stand silent while you destroy someone who has shown nothing but kindness and dedication to the crown. Catherine found her voice, though it was still shaky with emotion. James, please don't do this for me. You have a family to think about. James turned to her with a gentle smile that surprised everyone, including himself. Your Royal Highness, in all my years of service, I've never met anyone who cared more genuinely about other people than you do. The accusations being made tonight are not just wrong. They're cruel and unfair to someone who deserves better. Camilla's fury was now barely contained. You have no right to judge what happens in this family. You're nothing but hired help, and you've forgotten your place completely. My place, James said, his voice steady and clear, is to protect members of the royal family from harm. That includes protecting them from unfair treatment, regardless of where it comes from. He turned back to Catherine, who was looking at him with tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. Your Royal Highness, everything you do comes from genuine care for others? I've seen you with sick children when there were no cameras present. I've watched you remember the names of janitors and kitchen staff. I've observed your private donations to families in need. None of that is calculated or manipulative. It's simply who you are. Camilla stepped forward, her entire body rigid with rage. Get out of this room immediately, or I'll have you arrested for insubordination. James straightened to his full military bearing, looking every inch the decorated soldier he had been before joining royal service. I'll submit my resignation in the morning, Your Majesty. But I needed you to know that your treatment of the Princess of Wales tonight was completely unjustified. Catherine stood up shakily, her composure gradually returning as she witnessed James's extraordinary act of loyalty. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with genuine gratitude. James bowed formally to both women, his military training taking over even in this unprecedented situation. Your Royal Highness, Your Majesty, he said. then turned and walked toward the door with the same dignified bearing that had characterized his entire career. As he reached the doorway, he paused and spoke without turning around. "The Princess of Wales is one of the finest people I've ever had the honor to protect. History will remember her kindness long after tonight is forgotten." The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving behind a silence that seemed to echo through the entire palace. James's act of defiance had broken every rule of royal service, but it had also exposed that could never be taken back. The aftermath of James Mitchell's unprecedented intervention reverberated through Buckingham Palace like a seismic shock. By dawn, news of the confrontation had spread throughout the royal household, carried by whispers among staff members who had served the family for decades but had never witnessed such a dramatic breach of protocol. Camilla's immediate reaction was to demand James's immediate dismissal and removal from palace grounds. She summoned the head of palace security before sunrise, insisting that Captain Mitchell be stripped of his rank, his pension, and any future references. Her fury at being challenged by someone she considered beneath her station consumed her thoughts throughout the sleepless night that followed. However, Camilla quickly discovered that the situation was more complicated than she had anticipated. James Mitchell was not just any security officer. His 15 years of exemplary service, his military decorations, and his impeccable record made any punitive action against him highly visible to both palace administrators and external oversight bodies. More problematically for Camilla, word of the incident had reached King Charles before she could control the narrative. Several staff members had overheard portions of the confrontation, and the story they told painted a very different picture than the one Camilla hoped to present. Charles found himself in the impossible position of mediating between his wife and his daughter-in-law, with growing awareness that the incident reflected deeper problems within the royal household. Catherine spent the night in her private apartments, supported by her closest advisors who were deeply concerned about the personal attack she had endured. The cruelty of Camilla's words had shaken her more profoundly than any public criticism or media scrutiny she had ever faced. The betrayal by someone she had tried to support and respect as family cut deeper than any external criticism. William's reaction upon learning of the incident was immediate and fierce. The future king had always been protective of his wife, but discovering that she had been subjected to such treatment while he was traveling on official duties filled him with a cold anger that surprised even those closest to him. His demand for a full investigation into the incident created additional pressure on Camilla and Charles to address the situation properly. James Mitchell reported to Palace Security Headquarters the following morning as scheduled, fully expecting to be escorted from the premises immediately. Instead, he found himself in a complex bureaucratic situation that no one seemed quite sure how to handle. His direct superior, Deputy Commissioner Sarah Thompson, had worked with James for over a decade and privately supported his actions, though she could not say so officially. The morning briefing with senior palace officials was tense and uncomfortable. James submitted his formal resignation, as promised, but was informed that accepting it immediately might create more problems than it solved. The incident had exposed institutional failures in managing royal household conflicts, and simply dismissing James would not address the underlying issues. Media attention began building throughout the day, though the specific details of the confrontation remained contained within palace walls. Royal correspondents sensed that something significant had occurred, but the strict protocols surrounding palace security made it difficult to obtain reliable information. The speculation and rumors, however, were often worse than the truth. Catherine made her first public appearance since the incident at a scheduled hospital visit 3 days later. Palace watchers noted that she seemed more subdued than usual, though her interactions with patients and staff remained warm and genuine. James was not part of her protection detail for this visit, having been temporarily reassigned while his future was determined. The resolution came from an unexpected source. Queen Elizabeth's former private secretary, now retired but still influential in palace circles, quietly intervened on James's behalf. His decades of experience in managing royal household crises gave him unique perspective on the situation. and he privately counseled both Charles and William on the long-term implications of how they handled the incident. 2 weeks after the confrontation, James was called to a meeting with senior palace officials. Rather than dismissal, he was offered an honorable early retirement with full benefits, along with a new position as security consultant for royal charities. The arrangement allowed him to maintain his dignity while removing him from direct involvement in palace dynamics. Camilla was privately counseled by Charles and senior advisors about the need to repair relationships within the royal household. While no formal apology was ever issued, subtle changes in protocol and interaction patterns suggested that lessons had been learned from the incident. Catherine and James never spoke privately about that night, but their brief encounters during his remaining time at the palace carried a mutual respect and understanding that words could never adequately express. His willingness to sacrifice his career to defend her honor had restored some of the confidence that Camilla's attack had shaken. The incident became a turning point in royal household dynamics, though its full implications would only become clear over time. James Mitchell's moment of moral courage had forced everyone involved to confront uncomfortable truths about loyalty, respect, and the human cost of royal service. Years later, James would look back on that night as the most important moment of his career, not because it ended his royal service, but because it allowed him to stand up for principles that mattered more than protocol. His loyalty to Catherine had cost him his position, but it had preserved something far more valuable than his job.